Recording this. All right. So, just as our disclaimer, um, this is a training tool for the members of the Legends of Real Estate, agents with the Legends of Real Estate, or team members. We are discussing best practices and forms changes. If someone should happen upon this video that is not a member of the Legends of Real Estate, please confirm any questions that you have with your broker. We appreciate you jumping in, but please remember this is for members of the Legends of Real Estate only. Thank you very much. All right, so that's my disclaimer. I am going to go ahead and share my screen, share the presentation, change it over. Um, and we will do start from the beginning. All righty. So these are the forms changes that we're going to go over. Let me go ahead and send that package. Actually, let me wait. I've just got a couple slides I want to review for a second, and then I'll do that and give a couple more people a chance to pop in if they need to. These forms changes were released as of about, let's see, a week and a half ago. Excuse me? I'm sorry? Oh, that's okay. We good? All right. Um, a lot of these forms are coming out of Florida Realtors because now we use the Florida Realtor forms just to kind of give you an idea of how it works. The forms go through the forms content committee and then they are reviewed by the realtor attorney. This is the other reason that we have moved over to the Florida Realtor forms. It's because in part and parcel because it's an opportunity for us to have forms that can be reviewed. And while we had our attorneys for NEFAR, this allows us to be more consistent across the state. This whole thing is a process. I can't imagine anybody feeling like this hasn't been a process. It's been an over 2 year process. 2 years of last October when we started talking about forms changes and what forms we're going to be looking like and what we might want to be seeing. So things do take time, and we are responding to changes that happen in the market. So the things that happen at Florida Realtors that help us update our forms, these are all things that help us move forward. You guys, I hate to say it, but there are lawsuits that are continuing to pile up throughout the state and across the country. And sometimes we have to respond to those changes and also the when we start to use a form and see that maybe there are changes that need to be made to those forms, that's where all this comes on. So it's a process. I know it's can be painful at time because you like to have things consistent. I completely get that, and change isn't always easy. Um, but it's kind of where we're at right now with this. And I think we'll continue to see minor changes probably for the next year or so. So, and again, the changes that I think we're going to see here are fairly minor. Did you know that as of today, there are 167 Florida Realtors forms and Form Simplicity that have had changes? And in 2024, we made 65 form changes. In 2025, 25 form changes. So the answer to that is yes, you probably already knew that because of the pain point that goes along with all the forms changes. But I thought it was important to remind us, wow, a lot of changes that we've endured over the last couple of years. And congratulations to all of you who continue to move forward with your business in a variety of different ways. We greatly appreciate that. And I appreciate that not only do you embrace these changes, but you're willing to talk about them. And I love that you have questions about them too. What we are talking about today are some forms changes. And I guess I just need to confirm, can you see the presentation okay? Are you seeing that? Or did I not share my screen properly? Does
I
everybody see?
see you. I'm not seeing.
What are we talking about? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Okay. So you see that? Yeah. What are
Uh-huh.
we talking about? Funny you should mention that. All right. Okay. And who said that they could see me but not the screen?
Me, Sharon, but hmm.
This piece?
You've got
The chat?
the chat. Do we need that?
I'm trying to watch it so that I can see if anybody has a
I mean,
question.
if I could see it, I think it's a setting on your own computers, guys, whoever can't see it.
Let's see if I can close that. All right.
Okay,
I've closed the
I see it
chat.
now. Yeah, I see.
You see it? Okay. Nick, thanks for the thumbs up. I closed the chat so that the people in the office can see the slides better. Um, what you may want to do, if you have a chat or if you have something you want to throw into chat or say, just go ahead and shout it out, please. That was Cooper. All right. So the changes that we're talking about were done for a variety of different reasons. And let me go ahead. Now see, now I got to go back to chat, Kathy, because I got to send that. Let me go back to chat for a second because I did want to send that out, send the forms out. Uh, there we go. All right. I am going to go ahead and send the forms out in the order that we are going to receive them. So it should pop up into your chat in about 5 seconds, I hope. It's a large package. It's the 62 pages. Can someone please confirm that they see it in their chat?
I see it.
I have
It's
it.
it's there, Clark.
Great. Thank you very much. So if you want to open that up, it will be the order in which we are reviewing these form changes. Move a few of these things around here so we can see a little bit better. So closing the chat again, I think. Maybe. Is it up there? Is my cursor up there? No. All right. Over. Let's try. All right. Well, I may not be able to close it for right now. Sorry, Kathy. We'll figure it out. Thanks. All right. So some of the changes that have occurred related to legislative. So this would be the first form that's in that package, or if you have the forms, it's the exclusive right to lease on the commercial side. So this is the changes that have occurred here is the elimination of the business rent tax. And then it's also been designed to accommodate the recent MLS changes and rules. This would relate to us as the continued marketing addendum. Not sorry, continued marketing addendum. The seller. Oh my goodness, I always get the name wrong. The seller disclosure. The sellers. What is it? Somebody help me out. The new form for listing. Seller marketing disclosure. Seller. The one that includes option A, option one of seller waiver, or excuse me, option one of coming soon and option two of seller waiver, that form. That's the form that is related to this NAR policy change for our multiple listing service. So that's what they're referring to when they say NAR MLS policy changes because they're moving the policies down to the local level. So you'll see that they've removed the any reference to business rent tax because that's been excluded. So that's under the compensation, that in the exclusive right to lease on the commercial side. Again, this is commercial, so it may not be as applicable. And then the statement of owner and broker agree to adhere. This should be paragraph 6A, I believe. Agree to adhere to each local MLS's policies. So what this is referring to is that policy as it relates to when the property goes into MLS. And let me throw that out there right now. I know this is a commercial policy, or excuse me, commercial form, but let's talk about policy for a second. Clear cooperation, which is an NAR policy, is still that properties must be placed into MLS within 24 hours. We're going to see a lot of changes to that, I believe, in the next 2 years. Our MLS has said it's true. We want properties in MLS within 24 hours. However, we will give you a 72-hour window without any penalty. So if you are going to get a listing signed, today is the 20th. You get a listing signed today. That signature date starts the contract. And today, from today, you should have it in by tomorrow. However, if you don't have it in until the 23rd, 21st, 22nd, 23rd, then you're fine because we allow you, Real MLS allows you that 72-hour window, understanding that there may be things that need to get done in order for the property to be active. So if you are going to do coming soon or active, and it's going to be within 72 hours of the signature date on the listing agreement, you do not have to have the seller marketing disclosure. If you aren't going coming soon until, oh, you can't do that anymore. It would have to be, you would have to go right into a seller waiver of entry. In other words, that the property is not going to be in MLS. And under seller waiver of entry, you have two options. Either it's going to permanently be left out of MLS, or it's going to be out of MLS until a certain date. Disadvantage of seller waiver of entry.
Can you hear that?
Can you hear Selby? Do you have a question on that, Selby?
No.
Okay, thank you. Um, the disadvantage, okay, stepping back a second. Coming soon, remember, you can't show the property. You can publicly market it as coming soon. You can't accept offers on the property. So if someone were to submit an offer on a property when it's in the coming soon status, you have to discuss with the seller whether they want to go active before you present the offer. With seller waiver of entry says, I'm leaving it out of MLS. I can't publicly market the property. I can talk to agents in my brokerage about it. And if I get an offer, I can sell the property. So since you can sell the property when it's under seller waiver of entry, if you choose seller waiver of entry, days on the market start with the signature date on the contract. So if you do a seller waiver of entry for 2 weeks, in other words, keep it out of MLS for 2 weeks and go active in 2 weeks, so February 3rd or something like that, you would go on the market February 3rd, active in MLS with 14 days on the market. Does that make sense to everyone?
It does, but I don't agree with that, but
Or did you jump over to something completely different?
The question is, does this have anything to do with the commercial? Yes, it does, because the commercial references the NAR policy. And so I'm trying to make sure that we're all on the same page about what the NAR policy is, because you're going to see this multiple times in these form changes. So while many of us are not doing commercial leases, which makes sense, the point is one of the changes here, in addition to the removal of the business rent tax, is that this form now adheres to NAR policy. So I want to make sure we're all clear without saying, without going 17 times into NAR, mentioning NAR policy before we really make sure that we're all on the same page about what NAR policy is and how it's impacted us locally. Anthony, I don't necessarily disagree with you, but because the property can be sold, if someone brought an offer on a seller waiver. And I think we're going to see a lot. I don't think you're wrong. We're going to probably see a lot of changes in this with the Compass's purchase of Anywhere. And if anybody's not familiar with Anywhere, Anywhere is a consolidation of different real estate franchises. So Anywhere is the umbrella. Within Anywhere are a variety of different real estate franchises like Coldwell Banker, ERA, Sotheby's. Wait, not Sotheby's, sorry. Cochrane. There's 8 or 10. So Compass is long desired and is at odds with not only Zillow but NAR, and has long desired to be able to keep properties out of MLS for an extended period of time and not have it reflect where the market does not have an opportunity to purchase a property. Lots of questions about whether or not a pocket listing truly gets the best terms and conditions. But so I think we'll be seeing changes coming down the pike on that. Um, anyway, so Diane was asking if it's in coming soon, how much time do we have to get it into MLS as coming soon? So you have 3 days, the 72 hours to get a property into MLS as coming soon. So
That
you
in
have three.
effect now? I thought you said that was future.
No, that's in effect now. That this is the NAR policy and the
Okay.
way that our real MLS responded to the NAR policy changes was to offer the seller marketing disclosure, which gives them the option of coming soon or seller waiver. If a seller is going to do coming soon, but isn't going to do it tomorrow, then I'm trying to get over here to mute that. Um, if a seller isn't going to do coming soon, let's say we get the contract signed today and you don't want it in MLS in coming soon tomorrow, you want it in coming soon Saturday. Wait, what's today? Today's 20, 21st, 22nd, 23rd. So if you want it in coming in MLS on the 22nd, you don't have to do the seller marketing addendum. If you want it in on the 24th or the 25th, you would have to do the seller marketing addendum as a coming soon and then when it's going active.
Yeah, that's a danger. I got dressed so that I understand that.
I just muted
Everybody
you.
has to mute the
Selby,
speakers.
Selby, can you please mute? I tried muting you, but it
There's a
obviously
little,
didn't work.
looseness to that schedule. I thought, well, changes.
Try again. Sorry. Um, so let me back up. Sorry. If you have it signed today, you have 3 days to get it into MLS as active or coming soon. If you're going to get it as active or coming soon within 3 days, you do not have to have the seller marketing disclosure. If it's after that third day that you want it in as coming soon, then or active, you'll have to make a decision. Do you want to do the seller marketing disclosure as coming soon, or are you going to do a waiver and then make it go active? You can no longer use seller waiver and coming soon together. Okay. So you've got that 3 day window. That's your grace period to do whatever you need to do. But after that 3 day window, you have to use the seller marketing addendum. If it's within that 3 day window, you don't have to do anything unless you're doing a seller waiver and not putting it into MLS either permanently or until a certain date. This will come up again, so we can always, you know, in the forums, we can always take a look at it again. The next one is the receipt of condominium or cooperative documents. So we don't use this a lot. We use the condo rider to acknowledge a request from the buyer to the seller as to the documents being received or will be received. They either have received them or they will get them or they have to identify a date. This receipt of condo or cooperative documents is something that is used to confirm or affirm that the buyer has received all documents, and this form didn't used to include the turnover inspection. So the turnover inspection report has been added to this form. Now, turnover inspection reports are most often used with newer condominiums, but you don't have to. The other reports would be required, like the milestone report. So this is the turnover inspection report has been added to it. And it is in here. It's to meet the, oops, I'm sorry. This is the Miami one. So the receipt of the condominium or cooperative documents.
What is the turnover inspection report? Unless
The
everybody
turnover
knows it, and I just don't.
Excuse me?
I don't want to take everybody's time if everybody else knows it. I don't know what a turnover inspection report is, but if everybody else knows it, then I'll
No,
look
no,
at it
no.
myself.
I'm sure that there are many of us that aren't familiar with it. When a condominium building is built, there's a time customarily that the builder or developer has a significant portion of the rights on the association. The turnover report is when the numbers have exceeded a certain percentage and the builder releases their claims or their position on the association or within the association. So everything gets turned over to the current owners.
You have to do an inspection before that, before it gets turned over.
I'm sorry, before it gets
And
turned
they
over.
have to do an inspection on the property, on the condo building before it gets turned over fully? Is that why it's called inspection report?
Well, there's the inspection, there's the turnover. When it gets turned over, there's an inspection that occurs prior to that that shows that everything is in condition or that
Okay.
confirms the condition of the condominium complex or building that's being turned over to the actual, it's a very minor inspection report, um, or ethereal inspection report. Yes, ma'am.
Does that pertain to apartment complexes that are converted to condo?
It would. The question was, if you didn't hear it, does that apply to apartment complexes that have been converted to condos? Yes. The developer who's converting them to condominiums will hold a portion of them until it gets to a specific percentage of ownership, and then there would be a turnover that occurs to the full ownership. Anybody want to add to that? Okay. The next one is more of an awareness thing. This is the Miami septic system disclosure. There are some new ordinances down south. The reason I want to make sure that you're aware of this is because we have a lot more people from the south selling into our market, and you may have friends or family that want to use you down there. It's not in your packets. Um, so it's not in that packet. If you pulled that packet down, this is more of a information element. You can get it on Florida on Form Simplicity, and it's also in app files if you want to see it. But it's really just to mirror the ordinances that have been put into place in Miami related to septic systems, and the sellers need to disclose what's been done at that point for the buyer. So they have to identify the type of septic system that exists. All right. So NAR policy updates. So maybe just I should have waited till here so that there wasn't that confusion. But all of the changes that we're going to talk about, all the changes that occurred to forms now are changes that were made because of the NAR policy updates, which impacted MLS rules and bylaws. And that has been the piece for us in our market, the piece that it's impacting is coming soon and seller waiver. The ability to do both of those and how we manage those, and the requirement for transparency and the separation, really, a little bit of church and state to, excuse me, minimize liability. And this is where we've now changed over to having the one form. Um, there was the discussion of the DIML, the delayed marketing form, which we used as the seller marketing disclosure. So these changes are brought about because of that policy. And what you'll see is that on the exclusive brokerage listing agreement, in paragraphs 5 and 6, it will reference the NAR policy changes. And then in paragraph 10, we're going to have to say, check all that apply. So this is to paragraph 10. Used to say check all that apply, and that was for the compensation to the buyer's broker from either the seller or the seller's broker. It now identifies check one option only. So what does that look like? So here in the listing agreement, it's going to identify the multiple listing. It's going to say the seller and the broker agree to adhere to each local MLS's policies. So what the NAR policy did was instead of being an umbrella policy for all MLSs, it took the basic policy of cooperation and then pushed policy down to the local MLS. Our local MLS, Real MLS, replied with the seller marketing disclosure. And that's the piece that has the two options, one, coming soon, and two, seller waiver. So in paragraphs 5 and 6, we talk about applying to the rules, the local MLS policy rules. And then in paragraph 10, this now says choose one instead of select as many as you want and select all that apply. Not major. Please remember paragraph 8A says what we're going to get paid. 10B says what the seller is considering. And this is where we have to really focus. There's a lot of changes going on when all this change in compensation being removed from MLS started. We were saying, it's best make phone calls, it's best ask, it's best. That's not the position anymore. Informed decisions. You're working, the whole DOJ was separation of buyer and seller, transparency. You have a contract with the buyer. The buyer has an obligation when they're making an offer. If they want assistance with their buyer broker compensation, they have an obligation to ask of the seller whatever they would like. And your job is to translate that. And I know we have a lot of confusion, or we have a lot of different, well, I don't know that, yes, good word. We have a lot of scenarios. The reason we have a lot of scenarios is because I think we're not being guided in best practices. We're trying to help you with best practices. Remember, the buyer is supposed to make a request to the seller. That occurs in the contract because the contract is between the buyer and the seller. Any agreement for negotiation occurs between the buyer and the buyer's brokerage, or the seller or the seller's brokerage and the buyer's brokerage. Those are affirmed in addendum GG. And I was talking to someone last night. The only time you don't need addendum GG, the only time you don't need that is if your compensation agreement is executed prior to your contract being executed. What? How can that happen? I can call you and say, as the listing agent, hi, is your seller offering compensation to the buyer's broker? And you can say, yes. And that's really kind of where that conversation should end. But you might say, you know what? They've committed to 2.5%. So I'm going to go ahead and send you the buyer broker agreement now that you can include with the offer. Well, if the seller has already executed that buyer broker agreement and your buyer executes it at that time, you now have a buyer broker agreement, excuse me, you have a compensation agreement that's executed prior to your contract, and then you wouldn't need addendum GG. But when you're writing an offer, you should always include addendum GG because that's what protects us to get that compensation agreement executed. And you think, well, if I just write seller to pay, that should be sufficient. Not really, because the seller is agreeing to pay in the contract, but there's nothing to say that the brokerage can go after that. There's nothing to say that the buyer agreed or the buyer requested it and the seller agreed based on the buyer's request. So the seller could always say towards the end of it, well, I decided I wasn't going to pay that. I negotiated that away with the buyer. They're paying that. I'm not paying that anymore. And then we don't have any agreement, which is the compensation agreement, to go get ourselves compensated from the seller or seller's broker as had been originally agreed.
I have a situation that happened yesterday. I have an LOI sent out to those people,
This is commercial?
land deal.
Is it commercial land or residential land?
It's for residential.
Okay.
The sellers on the LOI they crossed out the price, they wanted a higher price. And they also put in there a note that says buyer to pay seller's compensation to the broker, but they didn't specify. Because they don't have a broker. I'm working like from both sides. They don't have an agent. So do I have to fill out a compensation agreement with them first before they can even ask for the buyer to pay their,
No, so
because I don't have.
your letter of intent is going to indicate kind of what's expected. You need to have a buyer broker agreement with the individual submitting the LOI because that would indicate what that buyer is going to pay you. And then there would need to be a request from the buyer to the seller to say, we want you to pay this amount, or the seller agreeing, I will pay an amount towards the buyer's broker compensation.
I don't have, there is no paperwork right now except for
Okay,
LOIs.
this would have something we'd have to do on a separate, because you're talking about a crossover between what would be commercial and what would be residential. And I'm concerned that maybe we're missing a few pieces.
No problem.
Okay. So, the only time you don't need GG is when there's a compensation agreement that's been executed. Otherwise, GG assures that there'll be a compensation agreement executed. We don't ever want to, when you're on the listing side, you're going to get an offer. The best time to make sure that the offer is complete is at the beginning. So if you need help with something when you get an offer on one of your listings, please reach out and we can talk about what pieces may be missing so that your counter is complete. Because I know it's difficult to get things submitted quickly when you're trying to move the contract forward, and we don't want to delay anything, but it's always harder to go back and try and fix things afterwards. Not that there's anything that can't be fixed, but sometimes it's harder. Sorry, we're bouncing around. This is the exclusive brokerage listing agreement. 10 is now just choose one option, and then the other piece is going to be the MLS bylaws. Under the limited service listing agreement, this is often used when you have a for sale by owner, or you're working with a seller on a limited basis. So again, what we're adding into paragraph 4 is the multiple listing agreement that the seller agrees that, and the brokerage agree to adhere to local MLS policies. So that's the limited service listing agreement. Okay. The same thing is going to apply to the vacant land listing agreement. The vacant land listing agreement. Same thing. It's going to be paragraph 5 with NAR policy statement that the seller and the brokerage agree to adhere to the local MLS policies and further agree to execute any applicable forms. That form that they're referring to is the seller marketing disclosure. The exclusive right to lease listing agreement, again, solely the NAR policy change. So nothing major there. You can see there's a group here that is we're just adding words related to the local MLS policies. And as long as you're somewhat clear on what we need to do locally, you're going to be fine on any of these. And I understand that some of these may not be as applicable in your business model, but it's important that you know what's changing in case it comes across your desk. The exclusive right of lease listing agreement, again in paragraph 6, the removal of the language of the tax on the for the business tax on the broker. So that's a second change on that. We've got the first change is the NAR policy in paragraph 4A, and then in paragraph 6, the removal of language related to taxes. This is the lease. The exclusive right to sale listing agreement, commercial. So this is listing a commercial property, listing exclusive right of sale exclusive right of sale listing agreement for commercial. We're just adding the NAR policies in paragraph 2. The reference to the seller and broker agree to adhere to the local MLS policies. Anything we want to talk about on those? How the NAR policy may impact these forms? I realize some of these you're not going to be using very regularly, but remember, NAR policy changes have been pushed back to local. Our local MLS, Real MLS, has elected the seller waiver of entry rather than delayed marketing. The local gives you the option for coming soon or seller waiver, and seller waiver can either be permanent or until a specific date. All right, so for the Forms Committee, these changes were approved by the Forms Committee on forms. And the first is really encompassing that buyer broker agreement. So for any buyer broker agreement, for the one that has the single agency with the consent to transition, for the no brokerage, for the sole single agent, or the one that we use most, which is the exclusive buyer broker agreement, which is the transaction broker format. Again, there are the 4 different formats. Transaction is obviously the most utilized. What's happening here is in paragraph 5, again, removal of any language related to a broker doing a credit check. So we remove the language of credit check. Now, if we as a brokerage were to say that we want to do credit checks on buyers, we would then give you language to add that into it. At this time, we are not doing credit checks on buyers. We don't intend to at this time. Your buyer brokerage agreements need to be executed prior to ever showing a property. I know that that's difficult when you're working with past customers, because it's very difficult to have that conversation sometimes. We need to get over that. It needs to be done prior to ever showing a property. It's not something that we put in a packet that when we sit down to fill out the offer, we say, oh, by the way, let's go ahead and execute this buyer broker agreement. It has to be done early and should be submitted in app files when you set up a file for an individual, or you should set up a file for an individual and put in your buyer broker agreement. Can't emphasize that enough. Seen a lot of wonky dates when it comes to the buyer broker agreement and the dates on the contract. Yes, I actually am a nerd enough to look at both. And that the parties, again, the parties can still agree to it. We would just give you the language. And at this time, we have no intent of actually adding that to a buyer broker agreement. Also, we've added, and this should be familiar to you under paragraph 5F, we've added an audio visual acknowledgement, acknowledging the property owners may have audio recording or video surveillance. So keep your mouth shut. Sensitive conversation should happen away from it. Insert a copy to return to the customer. So on most of our forms, like the listing agreements, down at the bottom, it identifies when a copy was provided. Remember, we have to provide copies within 24 hours. Hold on one second. Have we lost you?
Keep going.
Everybody okay? All right, so we've inserted a copy at the very bottom that identifies when you actually gave that back to them. The buyer broker agreement was delivered to the buyer. Just like with the seller, we have to deliver it within 24 hours. This we also have to deliver within 24 hours. You should be good identifying when it's supposed to go back, and you can identify the delivery method. So they just kind of made everything the same so that there's acknowledgement that it was provided back. The showing agreement, remember with the agreements, there's the exclusive buyer broker agreements, the 4 different exclusive buyer broker agreements. right.
Gotcha.
You're
So under the
freezing.
showing agreement, excuse me,
You were intermittently freezing.
I'm sorry.
You were intermittently freezing, like the whole.
Oh, intermittently freezing. Okay. Am I here now? Am I here now? Can you hear me now? Okay. Um, so remember there are three different kinds of buyer broker agreements. There's the property pre-touring, the showing agreement, and the exclusive buyer agreement. There are four different types of exclusive buyer. So the changes were occurring to the buyer occurred to all four exclusive buyer agreements. The date of return, um, audio visual, and or audio or visual recording. Under the showing agreement, just the removal of the language of the credit check has occurred on that showing agreement. That's the only thing that changed in that one. Remember, the showing agreement is usually for a specific property or for a list of specific properties. Under the next one, this is the milestone inspection and structural integrity reserve study disclosure. So what's new with this is that there's a notice to the seller to fill out the disclosure. Again, similar to the turnover or the notice, the confirmation of documents. This one we haven't been using a lot because we cover it in the condo rider, where the buyer requests uh, certain reports from the association, certain minutes from the association, certain documents, and all of those are then provided. They acknowledge it on the condo rider. This is a secondary form that if you would like to use to ensure that everyone agrees that the seller has provided it, seller has to fill out this disclosure, and then they have to identify the association from which the information came. So where did they get the milestone inspection report? Customarily, the association that's monitoring them or that's monitoring the property would have a copy of that.
So this one and the other one with the condo receipt acknowledgement, those are not required.
They are not required.
Okay.
The con you bring up a good point. The condo rider, and a lot of you have been expressing concern over the condo FAQ. The condo rider and the condo FAQ are both required documents. The condo FAQ should have been put together by the association and should be available through the association, whoever, or the management company, whoever's doing that. Or if it's just a self-managed, then the board should have that condo FAQ already filled out. Yes, I understand that the condo FAQ has a lot of information that comes right from the condo writer or the condo docs. However, I did check and it is required. So we do require both of those, the condo writer and the condo FAQ. All right, vacant land contract. On the vacant land contract, vacant land contract was a little vague on timeline, so they've taken paragraph 11 and matched to be calendar days on the vacant land contract. And they removed the split in time that exists with what they had written. And then they've made it consistent with the other Florida Realtor forms for timing. So that's basically moving it to calendar days. And remember, it's calendar days. If anything ends on a Saturday, Sunday, or a federal holiday, it moves to the next non-Saturday, Sunday, or federal holiday. So if over this past weekend you had a binder that was due according to the contract on Monday, the 19th, that date actually moves to the 20th, which would be today. Okay, so form suggestion updates. So the contract to lease, this just includes under paragraph 2 an additional option for deposit. So when the deposit will be made on that contract for lease. Again, contract for lease is not going to include any taxes. And the biggest not the biggest, but probably the thing that we have to make sure that we're most comfortable with is the compensation agreement. I made a big deal out of making sure that we have that. So what's going to end up changing in the compensation agreement is we have eliminated the separate seller to buyer's broker or seller's broker to buyer's broker. Some of you have probably already seen that. There's only one compensation agreement now, and you choose which one it is off the compensation agreement. That means we also eliminated the modification to each of those agreements, and now there's just one modification. So I'm going to stop sharing this, I hope. What happens if my cursor will do this? Oops. All right. And I'm going to go over to share just the form so we can see what concerns we have about filling out those forms. All right. So here is the compensation agreement. Just kind of want to make sure we're all okay with how this is filled out. So this is the new compensation agreement. Some of you have probably already seen it. So you make the, oops, you make the choice up at the top of which compensation agreement you're going to be using. Is this the seller paying or the seller's broker? Notice it says check one. You just need to check one of those. You don't need to check both. There's nothing to tell you to check both. Just check one. Either the seller is providing the compensation or the seller's broker. Most frequently, you find the seller's broker providing compensation with brokerages that are single agent brokerages on the listing side. So if the listing reflects that it's a single agent listing, you're going to want to clarify whether it's a seller's broker or seller is doing the compensation to the buyer's broker. So you check one here and buyer's broker. So you would always identify the buyer's broker. So if we're writing the offer, we would submit this with our offer, whichever we believe is accurate. Is it the seller or the seller's broker, either based on past conversation, what we are assuming, which sometimes is a challenge because then you have to, if you assume the wrong one, you're going to have to go back and amend the contract or amend the, modify the compensation agreement. Then the property address. And if it's the seller, so if it's the seller, you need to fill this part out. Is the property currently listed? And who's the seller's broker? And if it's not, is the property not listed? So if the seller is providing compensation, you fill this out. You don't have to fill this section out if the seller's broker is providing compensation. Third paragraph, buyer's name, which is optional. Fourth paragraph is how long is this good for? It's been shifted from 30 days to 15 days. So once you have this executed, it's good for 15 days. In other words, it's good for 15 days or until you go under contract if it's before. If you're not going to go under contract within 15 days of this term, then you need to extend the term. If you don't think you're going to make it under contract in negotiation within 15 days, then you need to put in a different number here. Then there's the buyer's broker compensation. So how is the buyer's broker being compensated? Is it a flat fee? Is it a percentage or something else? Are there any other terms that we need to be aware of? And then it goes into paragraph 6, which is dispute resolution. Please don't have people initial everywhere. Notice it says these initials right here are for the bottom of page 1. On page 2, if the seller is compensating the buyer's broker, then you would have them initial here. If the seller's broker is compensating the buyer's broker, then you would have them initial here. So they've combined everything to one form, but what I've been seeing is a lot of people are just having their seller initial everywhere. They're just checking all the boxes and having them initial everywhere.
Just for, whoever makes these forms up, can they take the line of 6 and put it on the next page?
We can make that recommendation. I don't know if
it just seems that it's confusing enough without not knowing what section you're in, without flipping a page.
Yeah, because we are so accustomed to having the bottom of the page, to
The
be
initials?
initial, so
Yeah.
that really is,
Right. I mean, with
There's
any
a
luck,
lot of room on the
maybe
second
since this
page.
is a,
They're one line.
sorry, go ahead.
There's a lot of room on the second page at the bottom of empty space
Yeah,
that they
and
can
maybe
easily
this
move
is
that
because
down.
these are the, well, I don't know if this is because
Practice sheets.
this should be, I would have to look, no, this came right out of app files, so this is the way that it is currently. Maybe in a updated version it will go. That's the least of my worries right now, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So it
Um, yeah, my bigger concern is that we're having sellers initial everywhere just because we don't want to pay attention to what they're supposed to initial. If you have them check if you, under app files, if you're selecting seller initials, that's going to be the bottom of each page. Then there'll be an option for seller or seller's broker. Just please have them, if it's the seller, that's just the seller that initials. And then any miscellaneous clauses, and then seller or seller's broker or authorized associate. That would be you guys on behalf of us. So which is it? We don't have to sign both. And then the buyer's broker. It's your listing versus if you're working with the buyer. If the seller's paying, they sign here. Seller's associate here, right? So if there are two sellers, they sign here. 1, 2, 1, 2. There's only one seller here. If there's 4 sellers, then you have to add some lines, some signature blocks. Okay.
Sure,
good for you.
5.
They what?
Like my green bottles, they have 5 tabs.
To add to it. Okay. So just based on what I'm seeing is that just remember, because we most often do seller to buyer's broker, and probably 80% of the brokerages are also doing seller to buyer's broker, it's here and here. So paragraph 1 or section 1 and section 2. If it's seller's broker to buyer's broker, then you just select this option here. You don't have to do anything with this section here, but you do need to fill in the address. So if you're making an offer and it's seller's broker to buyer's broker, check this box, put in our name, put in the address, and you don't have to do anything down here. Buyer's name is optional. Watch the date line. I know that some of our negotiations are going a little bit longer, so watch that date line. And then if we could move dispute to the next page, remember if it's the seller, it's the first 2 paragraphs, and if it's the seller's broker, it's the 3rd paragraph. Okay. And then the modification just follows this. You would just choose which format that you're using. If you have to modify this, so for example, if initially the seller and buyer have agreed, or seller has agreed to pay the buyer's broker 3%, but in further negotiation, the seller wants to modify the 3% to 3.5 because you're amazing, then you would modify that using the modification to the compensation agreement. So we all deserve 5 these days.
Yeah, I'll say.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the form changes. Sorry that it was a little bouncy aroundy. Biggest things to think about. I think the one that we need to focus on most is the compensation agreement. That's probably where we want to make sure that we're getting compensated. The others are really some just verbiage changes. All of the forms have been adjusted to accommodate the new NAR policies, which have been related to MLS, have been moved to the local. which is real MLS, and we use the seller's marketing disclosure with the choices of coming soon and seller waiver. Um, what else? Questions for me? Let me see if we can jump up chat. There's one in here. Brett, are we still recommending for it to be seller to buyer's broker? We are still, that is our current policy is unless requested by the seller or if there's a specific reason, then yes, it would be seller to buyer's broker, correct. Again, the impetus for that recommendation, so that it's not just random, is when the DOJ came down and said, we have problems with the way you're doing business, the whole crux of it was the separation and the transparency. So everything is negotiable throughout the entire transaction. So once you set your compensation, that compensation should be this, if it's your listing with the seller, and if there's negotiation that has to occur, that occurs between the seller and the brokerage, you as representative of the brokerage. If you're working with the buyer, then any compensation should be negotiated based on your buyer broker agreement, and that compensation occurs on the side of that contract, which is your buyer broker agreement. If there needs to be requests or agreement made between the buyer and the seller, those things take place in the contract. Other questions for me, please? Need time to absorb? Is that
I
what
have
I'm
a
understanding?
question, but I
Yeah.
was trying to look it up myself, but I can't do it quick enough. The seller's marketing disclosure, whatever you want to call it. You said choice between coming soon or permanent. Are we still have a separate coming soon addendum, or is that incorporated now in the new form?
So everything is incorporated into that form. And
Okay.
remember, if the seller, coming soon is the first option,
Okay.
right? And then the second option is the seller waiver. You have two choices. So first, the seller has to acknowledge that they are, so if it's coming soon, there's one set of initials from the seller. If it's seller waiver, you need two sets of initials. One, that the seller acknowledges they're using a waiver and it won't be an MLS. The second set of initials are, so seller, now that you know that it's a waiver of entry, do you want it to be permanent or do you want it to go active in MLS after a certain amount of time? So with seller waiver, you need two sets of initials. With coming soon, you need one set of initials. Good clarification, though. So any previous coming soon form is gone. Any previous seller waiver is gone. We're using the one form, the seller marketing disclosure. And I know I have the name wrong. Does anyone see the correct name, correct full name? Anyway, you can shout it out if you want. I know it has seller in it. I know it has marketing in it, and I know it has disclosure. I just don't know if it's the right order. Well, it does start with seller. I know that much. Okay. Yes, Anthony? I see a finger up. You're on mute.
I'm trying to unmute me. Seller controlled marketing disclosure.
Seller controlled marketing disclosure. Thank you. Control. That's what it was. The seller has control. All right.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right. Are you guys good? Don't get too frustrated. I promise. It's not horrible.
That was all easy because half of those forms don't apply to me.
Well, there is that. But you need to be aware because you never know what kind of questions you're going to get asked. I know it was a lot to go through, but I appreciate your patience with it.
Are they going to release purchase and sales stuff now? Changes too?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't know
Okay.
if they're making
I
any
still
changes
want
to
that one paragraph changed.
the. I don't know that there are any changes coming from the purchase or from the contract.
Okay.
Sale and purchase contract. I have to keep getting that into my head. Anybody else?
Whew.
That's a good resolve. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. If you